What's going on, world? AJ here. Welcome back to a new episode of AJ Tech. And today on the show, we are going to talk about CompTIA Network Plus. More specifically, yours truly got the certification as of last Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. That's right, I am Net Plus certified now. So, we are going to talk about a little bit about the journey. We're going to talk about the exam itself. We're just going to celebrate in this episode of AJ Tech. Get yourself a beverage. It's water. Sit back, relax, and let's talk about Network Plus. Let's rewind the clock back to, hang on, Twin Gate's popping up here. My apologies. But let's rewind the clock back to March of 2025. A network administrator position opened up, and so I decided to apply for the position to see what happens, just to see if that is something that I want to pursue, see if that's something I would like to do. And I went for the interview. I decided to start my Network Plus certification because I figured I would probably need to get that eventually. And I got the job, and it's been a good solid couple months of doing the certification course on CPT Nuggets. Now, my company pays for the CPT Nuggets subscription, which is great. So I can go in and do other types of certifications and such through CPT Nuggets. So I completed the course about, I'd say, midsummer, and took a little break, went on vacation, and then a few months went by. I was like, I probably should get back into that, start working on that. So when I first got the job of a network administrator, I didn't know a whole ton about networking, but I knew some stuff about networking, and I learned along the way. It was basically some on-the-job learning. So I learned how to configure Cisco MX switches, install APs, configure everything on the network, monitor the stuff on the network, and set up network racks, run cable, cut cable even. Just learning as I go on this stuff. Now, of course, starting out, I was more reactive than being proactive. And here we are, almost a year in. We're definitely proactive now. Thankfully, we got it figured out. It was a little bit of a learning curve to figure out what it is that I do as a network administrator. So I had to pick some brains, ask some questions. A lot of questions were asked, of course, in early beginnings. And I finally got my footing. I finally figured out what I do day-to-day operations-wise and such. But back to the learning part, so I took the CPT Nuggets practice exam to see where I scored at after a few months off. Boy, was in the toilet. It was 40s. I think it was like 44%. They had a percentage grading scale on the practice exams for CPT Nuggets. Multiple choice questions, some drag or drop questions. They mix it up every time you take it. It's 90 minutes, 90 questions. And, I knew some stuff, but I had a lot of work to do. And so, after I realized I should not have taken a break, so lesson right there, if you're going to study for a certification, finish it. All right? Just go all in, finish it. If you need to stop for a moment and take a break, don't take months off. Take maybe a week, go back, continue studying, continue to grind, and get that certification done. All right? That's my advice. Don't lose track. Otherwise, you're going to be in a weird position when it comes to trying to take the exam. So I use Copilot on a daily basis, for work and stuff. It really helps. And so I asked Copilot, what can I do to get exam ready for Network Plus? It pointed me to Professor Messer. So, ProfessorMesser.com, all right? And I demonstrated and showed this site in our previous AJ Tech episode on how to get started in IT. He's got free videos, but he also sells content as well, and also the vouchers for your CompTIA testings for like 8 Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus, and such. So I bought the booklet notes after going through majority of the training, and I have a whole composition notebook that I was writing notes in from Professor Messer's stuff, realizing I could just buy his notes and study from this as well on my downtimes and such. So I went through his video training once. I went through it twice, maybe 3 times. So just to get an idea and feel, and to get prepared for the exam. While doing that, I went back to the CBT Nuggets and did the practice exams and continued to see my score slowly increase. And I got a plateau around the 67%, 68%. I was stuck. All right. I was stuck for a little bit. I kept getting the same scores. And I'm like, something's got to give here. And, of course, at that time, I bought this booklet. I also got the e-booklet as well. So I'm my downtime, while in the car as a passenger, or just taking it to the office and just flipping through the pages, reading the materials, the course notes. I'm using Copilot, asked to have it create me a 15-question quiz, multiple choice, and it's really nice on the app, the phone app of Copilot, because it'll generate like a push button quiz, while the regular app on the computer, you just have to keep track and type in your answers as you go. So I recommend doing 15 questions and no more, and then continuing with another set of 15, and then another set of 15, however you want to do. But every day I would quiz myself. Every day I would have it do 15 questions, do another set of 15 questions. So basically 30 questions total. Sometimes I'll go to 45, with it. But that's as much as I would get on that. So for quizzing. So I would do once a week, I would do the full 90 question exam on CBT Nuggets once a week, building up to get better. And then finally, about a month or so ago, I think it was probably a month and a half ago, I finally broke over my plateau and got up to 70s and 80s, and at one point got 90, all right, on the practice exam. And that's when I decided to buy the voucher and go ahead and schedule my exam. And so I bought the voucher off of ProfessorMesser.com, because since he sells it and it's cheaper on his site than buying it straight off the CompTIA site, it still works. It's basically a voucher code you put into the CompTIA. I think it's CompTIA.org. Let me verify that as well. CompTIA.com. So you'll need to create an account with CompTIA and sign into that, and then go through the process of scheduling your exam. And you'll pick either you want to do it online or on site somewhere at a testing center. I didn't want to do online at home, because I just think it's weird to have somebody watching through a webcam, and they have to inspect your area to make sure you have nothing around you that's going to be a cheating aid for you. So I was like, nah, I'm going to go to a testing facility. So the local college here in my town is a testing facility. So I scheduled there, and I scheduled it 2 weeks out. All right. Originally, I was shooting for May. I was going to give myself a full month just to make sure I was ready. But I misread the voucher. I read the voucher as it expires at the end of the month of April. So April 30th is when it expires of this year. I'm like, crap, I got to do it before. And then I realized I misread the year, and it was actually 2027. So I had a full year. But you know what? It worked out better, because it forced me to cram for the 2 weeks. And I was ready for it. I was definitely ready for it. Ready for this exam. And so I fine-tuned the areas I need to work on. And one of the areas that I struggle bust in when it came to the exam, subnetting. And I kid you not, the day before the exam, I finally understood subnetting. It finally clicked. literally the day before the exam. And Professor Messer has a 7-second subnetting method. And I learned that method. I was able to create the chart from memory. So you had to memorize the chart because when you go into the testing site, we'll just go ahead and move towards the day of. So the day of the Net Plus exam, I walk into the testing center. I get checked in, sign in, they take your picture, all that fun stuff. And then got assigned a locker to put all your belongings in the locker because you can't take nothing in there with you. So everything was in a locker. Your wallet, your keys, everything was in there. All right? You brought your phone, which I left my phones in the car, but everything was in the locker. And so I also had to turn my pockets inside out just to prove I have nothing in my pockets. All right? So just forewarning you, they're going to make sure you take nothing in there with you. The only thing they give you is, of course, the locker key. I put that on my wrist. And they gave you a dry erase sheet, like a dry erase sheet, like an 8x11.5 dry erase sheet with a dry erase marker. So instantly right there, before I started, I wrote out my subnet chart from memory. I was very impressed that I was able to do that because I just figured it out the day before. So there you go. And so I start the test, and I first start with the questionnaires, basically the agreements and all that stuff. And then you get to the exam. And I was sitting there like just a little nervous because this is the actual test. This is the real thing. But I was confident. But that confidence went out the window as they started you out with basically virtual practice labs. So I had to, the first one was piece together how the network is set up, like the infrastructure, like where things are plugged into and all that. That was easy for me because I did plenty of those. But then you get into ones where you have to use command line, and then there was one where you had to do a cable test, which is a virtual cable test, and you had all these machines connected to these couple switches, and you had to test these machines out to see if there was anything wrong with them, or if there was something wrong with them, and do the drop down boxes to select what was wrong with it, or nothing at all. And you had to do command line, you had to test the cables, you had to do everything, troubleshoot why they're not working, or they're perfectly fine. That I spent a lot of time on that one. So then finally, after those types of scenarios, you get into the multiple choice. By that time, my confidence is kind of shattered. It's in the toilet a little bit. So I'm cruising along. I'm answering the questions. Some of them I knew right off the bat. Some of them I second guessed. Some of them I questioned. Some of them like, I don't know, and took a guess. And then I realized time was running away from me. And by the time I get to question 50, around 50, 55, I got 20 minutes left. I'm like, holy cow, I got to go. So the test is 90 minutes. But for my exam, it was 70 questions. I don't know if that's going to be the same for everybody else. The questions may be different for everybody else because I hear these exams, they change it up every time you take it. So I'm trucking, I'm pushing through, and I finally get past it all. I review the flag questions. I have about 3 or 5 minutes left to spare. I was like, man, I was cutting it close. I was cutting it very close. So I clicked the next button to see what my score was. Nope, you have to take a personal survey. Oh, come on. And their timer was going, and it's like, it should take about 15 minutes to complete this survey. Well, I was trying to jam through that just so I could see my score. And once I finally got to my score, I was ecstatic because I passed. And I was really doubting myself, and I was praying to God, God, I don't know if I'm going to pass this. Lord, help me with this test. And God pulled through, man. I tell you what, help me to get through this test. So the grading scale for the CompTIA Network Plus, you had to get at least 720 to pass out of 900. So the grading scale is a little different. So they grade between 100 and 900. Passing is 720. I nailed it in the 800s. And I'm like, I got this. This is great. I did better than I thought I did. So with that being said, I walked out. I was sigh of relief, got my grading paper. CompTIA would email me the cert and all that fun stuff. And which, again, I had a printout off of my email hanging on this board up here. I got one in my work office as well, just to show off. So, but overall, the experience of studying for Network Plus was great. It was fantastic. And just going through CBT nuggets, which, you can study this other areas. But, I like to do the ones where you can lab virtually. And CBT Nuggets provides virtual labs, usually at the end of every sessions. They're bite-sized videos, bite-sized nuggets, if you will. And very informative, very easy to understand, and it was great. The studying for it was good. Going through Professor Messer just to fine tune my testing was fantastic. Professor Messer is great. I highly encourage you to check those out as well at professormesser.com. Check out his study notes and all that stuff if you're interested in doing the Network Plus. So, and testing wise, wasn't hard to figure out, wasn't hard to schedule, wasn't hard to do. I got intimidated by it, but I got through, and that's what matters, is that I got through, and I'm very thankful I did this. And this is a SMART goal that I set at work, because in our evals we have to write out a SMART goal or two or however, and I just did one, and I was like, I'm gonna get my Net Plus. Since I'm in networking, I need to get a certification, and my boss was like, I'd like for you to get that Net Plus by May, and I'm like, okay. And that's what really pushed me to get it done, was because he set that goal for me, and which it was a SMART goal too that I set for June, to get it done by June. So got it done in April, and that's a plus, and that's awesome, and very excited that I got this. Again, my first certification. It's a good one to get. It's good fundamentals or foundational for networking in general, and we can only go up from here. The IT journey continues. The IT journey continues to roll on. And I'm very grateful for the position that I'm in, very grateful for the job that I have. It is fun. It is awesome. We got a great team. I love what I do for work. And, you get paid well. I'll say that. You get paid well doing IT stuff like this. And it is great. And I'm excited for what is to come, and I'm very grateful and thankful for where God has put me. And 3 years ago, I looking back 3 years ago when I decided to start pursuing IT and decided enough's enough. I got to make changes. I need to figure out how to get into this IT world, because it's something I've always wanted to do for years. It's something that I always wanted to be involved in. And it was something all the way back in high school that I was like, I want to go do something with computers, something in IT. I didn't know what that direction would look like. And funny enough, when I was in high school, they had some vocational tech classes and stuff, and I did electronics. They taught networking. And I find it hilarious that after all these years, 22 years later, all right, since my senior year in high school, 22 years later, that's a long time. And I'm in networking. It was like it was meant to be. And like I said, we can only go up from here. All right? We can only go up from here. So my next steps after this now, since this is accomplished, I'm looking at the AZ700 because that's what my boss is recommending, because we're a cloud environment and it's basically cloud networking. And so, but before I want to pursue that, I'm going to start with the fundamental course, AZ900. So that's my current certification that I started working on this week. That's where I'm going to start with, and I'm going to build up to the AZ700 and get that under my belt. So that's the journey I'm on right now. So with that being said, if you want a cert, if you want to get your A+, go for it. Go get your A+. Check out Professor Messer's stuff. Free stuff on there. Free course notes. It may not have the labs. It may not have the labs. I don't know. If you purchase whatever he's got here, he may have labs. I don't know. I haven't really dove into all this stuff here. on his site. But I highly recommend checking out CBC Nuggets or ACI Learning. You know, like I talked about in my previous video. If you want to go check that video out, go check that out. It's basically how to get started in IT. So a couple options for you there. But Net Plus, man, it's a good start to get a good understanding of the foundations of networking. It's something that I think everybody should know how to do in the world of IT. At least having a good understanding how it operates. But anywho's, I rambled long enough. This video's gone on long enough. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Have yourselves a great night and take care.